Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming today. This is a 60 Minutes news conference that we will begin very shortly, but I will first ask each of the participants to make brief opening remarks. We will then open for questions. Please wait for one of the roving mics to get to you before you ask your questions. Before asking your question, please state your name and affiliation, the organization you're here representing today. We will ask that you ask one question only. Please no follow-up questions until everyone has had a chance to ask questions. And I would also ask one question per organization. I know we have multiple representatives from the same organization here today. We will start by opening remarks with Mr. Warren Buffett.
Yeah, I've been asked to explain the mechanics, which are on the website. The letters have been put up on the BerkshireHathaway.com website. And slightly complicated because Berkshire Hathaway has an A stock and a B stock. The A stock can be converted into 30 shares of B. I'll talk in terms of B throughout this. And I have roughly 14.25 million shares of B stock. And by letters which were delivered earlier today, I've committed 12,050,000 shares. They're earmarked, held by me, but every July I will be giving 1 million shares to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Did I say 10 million? I meant to say 10 million. And 1 million shares to the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation, and 350,000 shares each to the 3 foundations headed by my children, Susan, Howard, and Peter. And that will continue throughout my lifetime, subject to at least one of Bill and Melinda being active in their foundation. And then I will arrange in my will to have one of several methods that could be used to accomplish that after my death. And incidentally, the balance of the B shares that I'm keeping will go to philanthropy either during my lifetime or on my death. And as we go along, if you have any questions about how this will operate, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Great. I just wanted to start by saying Bill and I are absolutely honored and humbled by Warren's gift. It's really unprecedented in terms of what we can do to do good in the world, and it's something that we take very seriously. We feel an incredible responsibility. I think when you give away your own wealth, it's one thing, but to give away the body of somebody else's life work is really quite something. So it's something that we look forward to working with Warren on as a trustee. We have a great management team in place at the foundation. We'll obviously have to expand that somewhat and grow the foundation a bit over time. But I think what you should expect from us is that we'll really deepen the areas that we're already into. We're not going to broaden the foundation a whole lot of new areas, but really deepen our commitment already to global health and particularly to education. So I know Bill and I are delighted not only about the gift, but in particular about getting to work with Warren. And we're very, very excited about it.
Just a few quick things. We've known Warren since 1991, and it was his thought that wealth should go back to society that got us thinking about doing our foundation in the first place. And as that's grown, we've had a chance to share how that's worked out. I remember one time in 2001 where I got to give a talk to Warren and some of his friends about global health, and how excited I was about the opportunity to do something there. Global health is one of the 2 big causes the foundation goes after. Education, broadly defined, including scholarships and libraries in the United States, is the second. And as Melinda said, we're going to deepen, accelerate what we do around those areas. We'll pick some things that also touch on the same things of dealing with poverty or dealing with opportunity for everyone. And so it's a big challenge for us to make sure that this money gets used in the right way, but one that we're thrilled about, and thrilled that we'll have Warren as our 3rd trustee. So you're seeing the 3 trustees of the foundation here, and we're going to do our best job to have as much impact as possible. Certainly these problems are gigantic, and so it's not only what we do, but what we do with our partners, what we encourage other people to do, and the partnership often that we have with governments. So with that, I'll let Joe move to the questions.
Down here in front. Please wait for the mic.
Scott Cohn from CNBC.
It's on.
Is it on? And there's a question for all of you. I'm wondering if you can take us through the process, the mental process of going from accumulating wealth, which all of you have done, to giving it away. At what point do you decide it's time to stop accumulating and start giving away? And how did that process work for each of you?
Well, my original thought, and it was a thought that was developed with my wife 50 years ago, was that I would accumulate it through my lifetime. And I thought the odds were good that she would survive me, and that we always were agreed that it would all go back to society, but we thought the odds were good that she would be the one that implemented that. I had this theory, which she regarded as a rather convenient theory, that philanthropic needs would always be with us. They would today, tomorrow, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. And that if money was destined to go to philanthropy, that the people who were high compounders with money should be the ones that take care of the 20 and 50 years from now, and the ones that would be the low compounders should be the ones that would be taking care of today's needs. Like I say, she found that rather convenient because she also knew that's what I wanted to do anyway. But she died before I did, so I then was faced either with the choice of letting it run till the end of my life or doing something currently. And since I had a sensational solution for doing it now, better than any I could have imagined, I have selected these 5 foundations, all of which have their own strengths, to implement this. If you're accumulating wealth, it's very natural, or if you wish to accumulate wealth, to go to somebody that you think can handle money better than you can, an investment manager of some sort, whomever it may be, and turn your money over to them and say, you know, you can do a better job than I can do, make me some money. Well, I've got some people where I'm saying you can give it away better than I can, so I'm turning it over to you, and you do a better job of giving it away than I would.
Next question.
Yeah. Well, I'll just add to that.
Okay. Sorry.
A tiny bit. You know, it's been very exciting to be part of a business that's both been successful and had so much impact. And Microsoft is something I'll always have an incredible connection to, including being totally full-time the next 2 years, and then moving over to spend full-time on the foundation. I'm surprised how similar the work is in terms of picking great people and being very optimistic and looking out long-term. There's some differences as well, but you know, I love both, and you know, now it's even more evident that if I work hard, that there's the resources to have an impact, and of course I'm thrilled that I get to do that together with Melinda.
And I think you had originally thought that maybe it would be later in your life that you would start to give away, but as we got more involved, we got involved slowly, just at the beginning with Bill's dad, and then eventually we got into libraries, hooking up libraries with computers. But the more deeply you get involved in the work and the more you see the needs and the inequities that are out there, the more you want to do for these causes. And I think that builds on itself, and we've really gone very close to these issues and feel like there's work that can be done today to start solving some of the issues.
Marilyn Larkin, the Lancet Infectious Diseases. I'm wondering if you can...
It's on.
It's working.
I'm wondering if you can be a little more specific at all about what you'll be doing with global health, focusing on the top 3 that you have been, but you've mentioned something about a few other things in that area.
Well, as you know, today we already focus, as you said, on HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Those are the big 3 that we focus on. In addition, we've been doing some work more recently with rotavirus, and we're starting to go down the list of other diseases. You'll see that when there are diseases where we see that there's a medication out there that can already have an effect, we will start to get involved in some of those areas. But we look very much at what diseases have the greatest impact on lives. Where can you save the most lives? So, for instance, there is a drug, paramomycin, which in 2006 will hopefully become the first drug that the foundation, in partnership with our grantee Institute for One World Health, will hopefully bring to places like India and Bangladesh, where they have a disease called Kala-Azar, black fever. that we really can save about 200,000 lives a year if you can get this drug out there at a much lower cost than the drugs that are available today. So those are some of the areas that you'll start to see us pushing is go a bit down on that list of infectious diseases beyond just the big three.
Yeah, our key role is where the market isn't going to come in and come up with a solution. So that means the diseases that are in the developing countries and not in the rich countries. And that list is overwhelmingly infectious diseases, and in all the top 20 we have some activities obviously scaled to the size of the problem.
Over here. Gentleman in the red shirt.
For Mr. Buffett, my name's Sean McCarthy. I'm with the Globe and Mail from Toronto. Can you comment at all on what impact, if any, you expect your decision to have on Berkshire Hathaway, and particularly as you liquidate the shares? Do you expect that to have any impact on share value?
Yeah, I wouldn't have done this if I thought there was going to be a negative impact. And Berkshire trades less than most big cap stocks. In fact, it may be the lowest turnover on the New York Stock Exchange as a percentage of shares outstanding. And one of the complaints we get occasionally from institutional investors is the fact that it is not as liquid as you would think a company would be with the market cap that we have. So the turnover of Berkshire, which has been about 15% a year, if all of the stock I give away gets sold every year, it would move up to 17%. And as you know, there are many stocks on the New York Stock Exchange with over 100%. So I see no downside to that. There's certainly going to be no downside in terms of my enthusiasm or energies devoted to the job. I mean, I love the job of running Berkshire. I hate to tell you how much I love it, because the shareholders could get me to pay to have the job, and I don't want that word to get out. But over time, I actually think it also makes it a little more likely that which is immaterial to me, but some of our shareholders are interested in it. It makes it more likely that Berkshire would be included in the S&P 500. We're probably 4 times the size of the next largest company that is not included, and one reason is the lack of turnover. And over time, this will make for a more active stock, and I see nothing that on the horizon remotely that would cause it to diminish the intrinsic value per share of the company. And if anything, I mean, we will have 31% of the profits of Berkshire, in effect, that are being totally committed to charity. And I don't know that I could work any harder, particularly at what I do, than I do now. But that thought will motivate me.
Gentleman in the blue jacket. Second.
Somebody with the white shirt.
Thank you. Mr. Buffett, Mr. and Mrs. Gates, a question. Mario Platero, I'm sorry, U.S. editor for Il Sole 24 Ore, which is like the Financial Times for Italy. In Italy, some people would consider that, Mr. Buffett, you would be crazy to give away the money instead of giving it to your children. So what message would you give also to other countries that are not so much into this mode? And also, did you think about giving the money to the U.S. government? This is also from Mr. Gates. You know, governments in a way do take care of.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think anybody's crazy and people do leave their money occasionally to the government on death. You really got a couple of choices. You can leave a significant portion. You could leave all of it to the government if you elected to do that. You can elect a method of distributing your estate that leaves a significant portion to the government and a significant portion to other people, or you can elect to do it through a philanthropic organization. I think that in terms of the 40-odd billion that my Berkshire shares are worth now, I think that Bill and Melinda and also the people involved in the other 4 foundations will do a far better job in terms of maximizing the good that comes out of that money than would happen if it were dropped into the federal treasury. Well, you'll get a chance to judge that over time. But I think I have used the Gates Foundation as an example when I talk to students of a terribly successful organization that would per dollar spent, as also is true with the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation, per dollar spent, I think the results are terrific in terms of improving the lives of people around the world. So that would be my choice. Other people can look and see how this turns out, and maybe they will find a model that they want to emulate if the results are as good as I anticipate they will be.
I'd add to that we think philanthropy is something that is a choice that people make, but we want to show people that it can be a lot of fun and it can have a lot of impact. And so we think, whatever country it is, we'd like to encourage more philanthropy.
Absolutely.
On the end in the second row.
Amanda Gordon with the New York Sun. You introduced yourselves as the 3 trustees. I'm wondering about a possible 4th that's very well known in New York, Mayor Bloomberg. He's expressed an interest in devoting his life after office to philanthropy, and he also has an interest in public health, as you do. Have you spoken to him? Have you been in talks about his joining your venture?
Not recently, but I think perhaps 5 years ago, it was well before he was in office, he and I talked about philanthropy and the whole idea of what you do with your estate. And I mean, his record in philanthropy is extraordinary. I mean, he enjoys giving away money, and he enjoys giving away money intelligently on a big scale, wide scale. I admire what he's done. I admire what he's done as mayor of New York, too, but I admire what he's done as a philanthropist. But I've had no conversations with him about this recent action at all.
The other thing I think we should just add, as you probably know, we work here in New York City, and one of the biggest high school programs we've got is here in New York City because of Mayor Bloomberg and his partnership with Joel Klein. One of the big things that they're trying to do, and we're doing in conjunction with them, we're working in a lot of the New York schools to try and raise the graduation rates, and we're seeing some success there, where kids who graduated before the schools were graduating about 30% of their students in high school, we're now graduating around 80% of students in some of these new high schools. So we think they're in a great spot where they are right now to be doing the work in education, and we're excited about partnering with them.
Yeah, so I'd say, we have a lot of interests in common, whether it's, he's given money for malaria, he believes in education. So I don't know in what form, but I'm sure we'll find a way to partner with him one way or another, because it's great working with smart people like Mayor Bloomberg.
To the left side of the room. Jay? Go ahead, and then Jay, I'll get you afterwards.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Wanted to get back to your children, Mr. Buffett. Seriously, what did they do wrong? Did they break curfew? Tell us a little bit, please, about your philosophy about handing down billions to children.
Yeah, I don't believe in creating dynastic wealth. My children have all received money from me and my wife. They'll receive more on my death. But they are in the privileged top 1% at least of the population, perhaps the top 10th of 1% even. But I don't really believe that in a society that aspires to be meritocratic and that believes in equality of opportunity, my kids have had an advantage that over 99% of the kids in the country get for a whole combination of things. Even if they weren't given any money, they've had a huge advantage. I don't think it's in keeping with, it isn't in keeping with my view of how the world should operate to create huge amounts of dynastic wealth. I really believe that in terms of having equality of opportunity in this country and the right people in the right jobs doing the right things, I don't think they should inherit my position in society any more than if I was on the Olympic team 20 years ago as the 100-meter dash, which will be a little hard for some of you to imagine, that they should inherit my position, in 2008, or if I was quarterback of the Nebraska football team 60 years ago, which again is hard to imagine. I do not believe in inheriting your position in society based on what womb you come from. They didn't do it. Well, they did a few things wrong, but they did fewer things wrong than I did at their age. I'll put it that way. I am enormously proud of them. They are going to have the equivalent of $1 billion foundation each. I have seen what they have done in the philanthropic arena, both in terms of what they've gotten involved in and how they've gotten involved in it, and I couldn't be more proud.
Jay.
Jay Green with Business Week. Bill and Melinda, do you, by virtue of this gift, you're going to have to give away significantly more money every year. Have you thought about, or do you worry about the mechanics of doing that efficiently and effectively by just literally handing out that amount of money each and every year?
Well, it is something that, just in the last few months, we've started to talk about a bit and start to plan for it inside the foundation and think a little bit about what we might do. And we've always been, as a foundation, we always have ideas that are germinating inside the foundation that Bill and I will say to the foundation even 2 years ago with our own money, hey, here's a list. We kind of constantly have what I call the top 30 list of if we were going to deepen our work, where might we go? And we start working on that list pretty early. So we've been doing some small grants in the areas of micro-lending the last few years. We will continue to deepen that learning and probably expand out in micro-lending. We've been doing quite a bit of looking and research in the area of agriculture and what biotechnology does with agriculture, particularly following on what the Rockefeller Foundation has done. So we will deepen the work, particularly in a lot of our health areas, to surround what we're doing already in medicines. And we've always known that the medicines that we're working on, the vaccines we're working on, eventually we're going to have to get those into large-scale trials, and that's always going to have required a great deal of money. So we'll have that coming forward, and then we'll be surrounding those programs by deepening them and also figuring out how to deliver a lot of these medicines and vaccines. So I think you'll see us push in those areas.
It's fair to say that the size of the problems that we're taking on, whether it's in the global arena broadly or in education, we think that we can wisely take and even more than double the impact we have. In some ways, the early successes we have now give us the opportunity to scale up using the amazing resources that Warren's made available. So it'll be hard work to make sure it's all well spent. It means doubling over the next 3 years, up to over $3 billion a year of giving. But we're going to do that, and we'll do our best to make sure it's all well spent.
Well, Bloomberg, third row, and then gentleman to your left after that.
Pim Fox, Bloomberg News. Wealthy individuals are banding together to do good. I was wondering if each one of you could comment on whether you think this is a trend, and do you encourage more people to band together and to effectively solve some of these problems as a group rather than individually? And also, Mr. Buffett, joining your board as a trustee, do you think that more people will want to join your board now?
Well, I do think, just as when we buy companies, we don't buy them because we think we can provide better management. We look for management in place and then join with them. And I mentioned in investment management, you look for people that can manage money, and people turn money over to them freely. I would hope that people who are themselves unsure of what they want to do in the area of philanthropy, but know they want to participate, would look around. It doesn't have to be the Gates Foundation. It can be anybody whose activities they admire in that field and join in with them. Why not? I mean, the chance to join a proven organization where people are basically working for nothing and that have learned something along the way and are putting up their own money. I mean, I would think that will appeal to some people, and I really hope this example perhaps causes it to catch on in some quarters. On the other hand, I have no objection to people doing it themselves if they think they can get the best job done by themselves.
I think it's also important to say that, the foundations already talk and work a lot together. I mean, we're working with Michael and Susan Dell already on Texas high schools, particularly in math and science. We're working with Eli Broad in education, learning a lot of what he's done there. We're partnering with the David and Lucille Packard Foundation, some delivery work that they've done in India, 2 states in India. We're particularly interested in using the network that they have to get medicines out. So the foundations do partner and talk. I don't think you have to sit on one another's board to do that kind of thing. And even throughout time, and we were at the New York Public Library this morning, that was Carnegie and Astor and Bigelow together who put together that incredible library system for New York. So I think it's been done throughout time. Maybe you get these fluxes in history where it comes together more, and this might be one of them, but I think we all have the same goal of doing good in the world.
Yeah, so I think the key thing is to get more of the people who are super lucky to think about giving back and either backing people who have a way of doing that or having them come up with something that they'll put their energy into. We'd like to see more, and I think there is a slight trend in that direction. Ted Turner started off by kind of scolding people, and that was a good thing. We're trying to complement that by showing how much fun it can be.
And then again to the gentleman right here, third row.
Fred Conte, I'm of Reuters Television. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is already by far the largest foundation in the world, 30 billion strong. Now you're going to double the size with Mr. Buffett's donation. Are you concerned, having experience on the business end with antitrust, about the concentration of wealth, albeit in the field of philanthropy? And Mr. Buffett, did you give any thought to this before you made your decision? You could have spread the wealth around to other places.
Yeah, and there are 5 foundations involved, but you're right, though. You have to think about what activities are scalable and whether some actually become more effective with scale, where if you're double the size, you can accomplish more than double the results. I've watched the Gates Foundation for a number of years. I think in their field, I would be amazed if results diminished proportional to capital. I wouldn't be surprised available funds. I wouldn't be surprised if actually they became more efficient, more effective per dollar spent in doubling the funds. You know, there's no question that, you know, if your interest was, you know, taking care of stray cats, and you decided you were going to triple somebody's foundation, that you might not feel like you'd accomplished a hell of a lot at the end of the day. But when you've got billions of people who've been dealt a terrible hand in life around the world, with really hundreds of millions with health problems of one sort or another that in a great many cases could be prevented, that is not something that $3 billion a year is too much money for.
And I think it's up to us and to work with the management team inside the foundation to make sure that we build advisors in around our programs. We're not going to have advisors that advise the whole foundation, but advisors around specific areas. So we already do that. For instance, in the Grand Challenges for Health, there are 20 scientists outside of the foundation who sit. Out of the 22 seats, 20 are held by outside scientists who review every single one of those grants and give comments to those grants. And we see those comments when we're making decisions on things. So, and that's true of all of our programs. We build specialists in outside of the foundation to give us comments and review on that. And we'll have to make sure we continue to do that. And as we deepen our work, if we go into micro-lending or we go into agriculture, we'll have people who have already been working in that. We've already learned a great deal from the Rockefeller Foundation, who's been working on ag bio for many, many years. They're the ones who started the Green Revolution. They're out in 20 countries already. Well, you better believe we're out talking with them, partnering with them, taking their lessons learned and saying, okay, what else would you all do if you were going to come in and broaden your work or expand it even deeper? So we'll continue to do that over time with the foundation.
There was a will by a woman who was the heir to the Belridge Oil, one of 5 or 6 when Belridge Oil was sold out, and she left her money for the indigent, paraphrasing, of Marin County in California, and they really were having trouble. They had to almost import indigents. So there are things that don't scale up. Believe me, when you talk about health and education, you do not have a problem scaling up.
Woman in blue, third row.
Susan Dempsey on philanthropy.com. Mr. Buffett, in your interview in Fortune, you spoke about the need to make mistakes sometimes in philanthropy, and I wonder if you can comment on the value of being able to take risks.
Sure. It is true that in business I look for easy things to do. I mean, I've found that you get paid just as well for stepping over 1-foot bars as trying to clear a 7-foot bar, and there's no degree of difficulty adjustment for your if you make $1 million and you did it by a plain vanilla dive into the pool, you get paid the same as if you did a triple gainer off the high board. So you look for easy things in business, easy businesses to understand, you know, strong market positions, whatever it may be. Philanthropy is just the opposite. You are tackling problems that have resisted great intellect and lots of money often. I mean, these are important problems. People have thought about them before you. And people have many times spent money on them, and you are going to make mistakes. You're going to have failures. You're going to be disappointed with some people, and it's the nature of the game. And in my letter to my 3 children that is on the internet, you know, I told them don't don't just go for safe projects. I mean, you can bat 1,000 in this game if you want to by doing nothing important, or you'll bat something less than that if you take on the really tough problems. But there's actual value in things like education in terms of doing things that don't work, because you are saving society from repeating those mistakes, in the future. And if you try 5 models and 4 don't work, the 5th can be very valuable, and maybe you'll try 5 and 5 won't work, and then you've got to try 5 more. I mean, these are not easy problems, and if you have a total non-tolerance for mistakes, you're going to be very unhappy in the business. But you're doing important things, and the occasional home run that can be replicated by other people in society will far overshadow the cost of the mistakes.
A great example of that is that I thought before we got into this that somebody would be funding a malaria vaccine or an AIDS vaccine in a very big way. And yet those are such risky projects where you don't know how long it'll take. It'll take longer than a politician's term. May take a lot more money. There just institutionally was no organization that was there to kind of be at the center of taking that on. And so that's a very risky thing. We can't tell you when any of those things work. We've got enough irons in the fire that we think we're backing many different approaches because of the importance. But we will have many failures in drug discovery. We'll have failures in new school designs, but every one of those will be a lesson to us.
Right. Dagan McDowell at the Fox News Channel. This cements it that your children will not be getting the vast bulk of your fortune. How did you break it to them that you were going to give this money away to Bill and Melinda? What was their reaction? And Bill and Melinda, what was your reaction when you found out? How did he tell you, and what was your reaction when you found out you're getting the money?
Well, my kids' view was elation. I mean, they've known all along that my views on inherited wealth and share them. The idea of having considerably more resources to work with in terms of their own philanthropic interests got them enormously excited, and I think they'll do a terrific job with them. They have money that most people would dream of, and they were lucky in that aspect of when they selected their parents. But I think they've been, I put in the Fortune article that, I think that a rich person should leave their children enough so they can do anything, but not enough so they can do nothing. I mean, I think the idea that you have descendant after descendant after descendant that can command the resources of society with these claim checks that you leave them, for decades to come, and command the labor of other people and so on. I don't think it's the proper way to run a society, and I'm delighted my kids they were fortunate, and when I was growing up, or when they were growing up, more or less simultaneous, they thought. When they were growing up, we were not known as a fabulously rich family, and we weren't fabulously rich a good bit of the time. So they've had an existence that's quite consistent with the way they live now. They live very well, and they consider themselves lucky. They don't consider themselves quite as lucky as if they'd had a father with a different view.
I think it's important to say, first of all, that the money is not coming to us. It's being entrusted to us to give back to society. That's what it represents of giving it to the foundation. And Bill and I really live our lives with the belief that to whom much is given, much is expected. And as I said at the beginning, when you think about giving your own money away, it feels like quite an incredible responsibility. But when you start to look at the body of somebody else's life's work, and you say, my gosh, this is what Warren's done with his life, this is what Bill and I have done with our lives, that coming together, it's an enormous responsibility, but it's also something that we hope that we can live up to, and that we'll do our very best, put our best hearts and minds to it. Warren once said to me a few years ago, long before any of this came about, just when he was looking and we were talking a lot about what we were doing at the foundation, what we were excited about, he said, it's amazing what you all do with both rationality and world empathy. And I think that is what we're trying to stand for with all the resources that will go back to society.
It was just in the last 4 or 5 months that this started to really come into focus. And even then, I think I still thought, wow, is this really going to happen? And you know, today Warren signed the letter, and now we've got a incredible opportunity to take full advantage of that.
Check the ink.
The second row here, gentleman near the aisle.
Edward Chancellor, Breaking Views. A question for Mr. Buffett. Here. Now the foundation will be heavily exposed to Berkshire Hathaway stock going forward. Will you consider, in the interests of the long-term returns of the foundation, changing the balance sheet or the arrangements of Berkshire Hathaway, paying out, say, your equity portfolio a dividend or getting rid of some of its excess capital at some stage in the future? And I only ask that because you're a great asset allocator, but there may be asset allocators outside of Berkshire Hathaway who'd like to get hold of some of this money at some stage in the future and invest it on behalf of the foundation.
Well, I do consider, as I put in the letter, Berkshire to be almost an ideal asset to underpin the well-being of any foundation. Now, that's one of the reasons I have arranged the structure as I have, because if I'd given the stock outright, the foundations, they might very well be criticized for having such a high percentage of their assets in a single stock. This way, in effect, I can make the decision as to what is behind these resources that are going to go to society, and there will be no change in any corporate policy at Berkshire Hathaway because of this. We've always tried to get the best long-term result for shareholders that we could, and there's even some economic principles in the back of the Berkshire annual report that explains that. So I've always been incentivized to do that. I've always committed to do that, and I think this is the best way, personally, to have 40-odd billion invested that will go back to society over time. There'll be stocks that end up doing better at Berkshire. There's no question about that. There'll be dozens, hundreds of stocks that will end up doing better. But in terms of being the surest way of getting a good result, not the possible way of getting the best result, but the surest way of getting a good result for society with the funds, I feel good about Berkshire.
And we're thrilled to have it be Berkshire. I'm biased, I'm a Berkshire director, but we're thrilled that those are the assets that will accumulate and create the power for the foundation to do more.
This in the tan jacket.
Hi, Suzanne Pratt, Nightly Business Report on PBS. My question is for Mr. Buffett. Following up on an earlier question regarding the stock, can you think of any reason why Berkshire Hathaway shares would sell off on this announcement today?
Well, I don't know about today. I can't think of any reason why they would sell off over any period of time. Now, anytime people get breaking news on a stock, you know, who knows how they react in a given hour or day or even a week. But I see no way that it decreases the intrinsic value per share of Berkshire, and I see no way that it, over time, changes the price of Berkshire relative to its intrinsic value in the market. So there should be no downside whatsoever, and I can possibly see some upsides over a period of time just in increasing the liquidity, but that's not a consideration in what I'm doing.
Right here.
Mr. Buffett, Anthony Mason with CBS. You have said you don't feel as well cut out to be a philanthropist as the Gates are.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, I think they can probably I think they'll probably spend more time and energy on it, and I am so involved in what I do. I'm having so much fun doing what I do that for me to say I'm going to spend a high percentage of my time in some other area, it's just not realistic. I mean, I would, you know, it's like me quitting cherry Coke and hamburgers. I mean, it isn't going to happen. So I think they will be more able to accept mistakes than I would feel about. I have no problem accepting their mistake because they're going to make them, and anybody's going to make them. I don't like to make them myself, so I would rather have them make the same mistakes that I would make, and probably some fewer, And I have so much fun doing what I do that Bill gave me a book last night about, how many pages is there?
892.
Yeah, 890. Okay, and he said I'm giving you a quiz on this in the morning, and
It's about disease.
he's better. For one thing, you read way faster, but he can soak up this information on a whole bunch of subjects so much faster. If I were to have unlimited time in the next year, and he were to have unlimited time, and we started from the same point in terms of learning about medicine, I would give him the blue ribbon and go off and do something else. He'd win. And that doesn't bother me. It just means he's better at it than I am. I'm better at managing money than most people, and that's what I've done. And it makes sense for people to turn their money over to me to do that. It makes sense for me to turn the money over that's going to go into philanthropy to Bill and Melinda. I would not want to listen to as many different people with as many different opinions as they enjoy listening to. I love questions from journalists, though. I mean, that's good.
I think we have time for one more question, Marilyn Chase.
Marilyn Chase from the Wall Street Journal. I'd like to ask the Gateses, you often speak of your grants not as an end in themselves, but being catalysts that you hope will draw their partners and draw their funders and donor governments into the enterprise so that your programs will be scalable. Taking that question into the arena of philanthropy, do you see this merging of your fortunes as being the beginning of an era of mega foundations, and what do you think will be the impact on philanthropy, and what would you like the impact to be?
Well, I think there'll continue to be foundations of all sizes because it's very appropriate. If you want to solve certain local problems, then small-scale foundation is a great way to go do that. If you want to deal with billions of people and really get out all over the world, then you probably need more scale to do that. One way of dimensionalizing what we've got here, it's about 50 cents a year per person, or $1 per year per the poor half, which is compared to these problems we're trying to solve, in some ways kind of small, and yet we're optimistic that between what we do, other philanthropists, working with governments, that these problems can all be solved. I hope we're seeing a rise in philanthropy and that everybody who's got wealth feels that this is something they should do and that they want to do. I hope people have learned from Warren's philosophy about how we really owe it to society to give the wealth back, and getting the people who want to be involved to do it maybe at a younger age than when they die. That goes back to sort of the gospel of wealth. It's an article that Warren gave me quite a long time ago, and great thoughts about philanthropy.
I would just add that I don't think the wealth all has to be concentrated in one place. It happens to be in this foundation a very large bulk of wealth. But we will continue to work the way we're working today. I mean, we will still work with the other foundations that we're working with so closely today, and so many partners that we work with and we rely on today. And I don't think that changes just because of the scale of the money that's involved here. It just allows us to deepen in our areas. And it's something that we're obviously tremendously thankful to Warren about, and tremendously excited about for the impoverished of the world.